which one of history's "good guys" was actually a horrible person. As long as I never see Steve Irwin, Mr. Rogers, or Bob Ross in one of these threads, we're good. It's my estimation that every man ever got a statue made of him was one kinda some bitch or another. Captain Tightpants. Alexander Graham Bell pushed for the eugenics of deaf and hard of hearing people and was a major obstacle to fund schools for the deaf, which thankfully did persist despite this shat. So I learned recently that Coco Channel of channel number 5 was very anti-Semitic and eventually became a Nazi spy. Edit. Spelling. Rudyard Kipling, author of The Jungle Book. Paraphrasing, the only way to keep the yellow man out is to bring the white man in. Not necessarily a good guy, but got lots of positive attention from the release of The Greatest Showman. Apparently P.T. Barnum was a terrible person in real life. Alfred Hitchcock was an asshole sexual predator. Tippi Hedren wrote about it in her memoir Hedren Alfred Hitchcock The Birds Marnie Tippi 93,064,436. She did say he was a brilliant film marker, so you can be both. While he almost certainly wasn't the first to say it, Lord Acton once observed that great men are almost always bad men. Pluck any great man from history, those rare figures about whom the story of the human race seems to turn, and you find a monster who changed the world, probably without even intending to do so. Jebediah Springfield, or his real less commonly known name, Hans Sprungfield the murderous pirate. Lighting McQueen. Henry Ford was so anti-Semitic that Hitler considered him a hero. Tinkerbell. Everybody thinks she was so cute and such a good friend to Peter, but she was a jealous psychopath and tried to murder Wendy several times. This thread reads like the Oatmeals greatest hits. Ned Kelly is neat because he seems to have recognized his anti-hero status. His actions were never morally right, but it's hard to say we haven't ever wanted to do the same. Since most have been covered, it'll do a guy who was a true ducking villain who turned into kind of a decent guy. It doesn't nearly wipe the slate clean, but it's an interesting historical transformation. Nathan Bedford Forrest. Slave trader. Confederate general. Likely war criminal. First Grand Wizard of the Klan. In later years, Forrest expressed regret at his life's work. He began publicly advocating for former slaves to receive better treatment, including their ability to enter into higher education. He attempted to act upon his shame by petitioning President Grant to allow him to put down the KKK by force. Edit. My caveat wasn't strong enough, and that might be my own clumsy wording. Forrest was undoubtedly a monster in some ways, and his legacy as one shouldn't be altered, despite his regrets. In this thread, a lot of people who were never considered good guys. Astronomer here. This is a hard one to admit, because I definitely loved his book and idolized his antics a bit when I was a young physics major. But Richard Feynman. A lot of people read Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, and share my reaction. And his physics lectures are amazing. But the older I get, and the more people I meet who knew him, holy s it. The guy was beyond just times were different levels of misogyny against women. He committed domestic violence against his wife Feynman. Physical abuse science wife FBI HTML. Kept lying to undergrads when he was in Cornell that he wasn't a professor so he could sleep with a man. Rumor has it, had to leave Cornell for Caltech because he slept with other faculty members' wives. And I've definitely heard a ton about him trying to pick up other scientists at physics conferences to know he was considered a creep. To be clear, I think someone can do good science and be an awful person. But that's not what Op was asking. Also, anyone who has been around a physics department knows that casual sexist jokes and the like are still not that uncommon today. And the fact that physics keeps idolizing Feynman probably doesn't help in changing the culture. There's a statue of Oliver Cromwell in London. Loads of movies about him and how he was a brave revolutionary. Now, duck that. He was an evil sociopath who committed genocide on Irish Catholics and turned the UK into a Puritan dictatorship. Steve Jobs was a bit of an ass. Bob Marley. And there's a very good story to back this up that also explains how he grew to be one reggae singer of Jamaica. He had a posse of friends that would intimidate radio networks of Jamaica into playing his music. as well as destroying the alpha discs of other newer artists' IDKWTF their cult, but the copy the radio networks were given in order to play on the air. He might have been trying to promote feel-good music and peace and all that, but he was a thug when it came to getting that music out. Fails to stir it up amp. A shorter list would be which of history's good guys were truly good guys, and not later found out to be complete $HOLES. Edit. Thank you for the award, stranger. I don't really know what else to say. So, thank you. Charlie Chaplin. He got married to a 15-year-old girl because he got her pregnant when she was 14. He was openly pedophile. And, from what I've read, quite an asshole. This is a little more niche, but Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, the guy did great things and created a program of recovery that has saved millions of lives since its inception 85 years ago. He was also an arrogant asshole that cheated on his wife even in sobriety. Edit. This isn't here to scare away anyone that's trying to get sober. I've been sober thanks to AA for 2 years. So don't let this keep you away if you're struggling with your drinking. Alexander Graham Bell. This man did not invent the telephone. Several people were working on similar technology at the same time. Antonio Meucci invented it first, but there was a court case over who got the patent rights. Meucci died before the case was settled, and Graham Bell won the glory he didn't deserve. In some aspects to the 60s and 70s, when the Beatles were icons, him talking about John Lennon, people who use his image and face for peace sometimes forget important details. He abused women, he was a cheater, he abused his children, made one go completely deaf and one ear, total hypocrite on the no possessions when he lived one of the most lavish lifestyles of his time, compulsive liar, had a restless appetite for his own mother, almost killed a few people. Look up Bob Wooler. He was almost punched to death by John. There were others, but their stories have either been disputed or unclaimed. So whenever I see a bunch of people sing Imagine, I just shake my head in shame, cause so many people don't even know how bad he was but act like he was a saint. IDK man. When I read about Martin Luther last year, I thought he was kinda cool as he created the Protestant branch of Christianity. But I recently read about what he thought of Jews and yikes. For those of you who don't know, he got pissed when the Jews didn't want to convert to his religion and started being anti-Semitic as FCK. He wrote a whole book on Jews and their lies and said that he urged others to burn down synagogues to prove their loyalty to Christianity. He also wanted the Jewish prayer books to be taken away from them because of misunderstandings. I do not mean Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther was a monk during the 16th century who initially started the Reformation for Christianity and was the founder of Protestantism. America's dad, Bill Cosby. Depends on what you mean. Judging by today's standards, I'd say most historical good guys were horrible people. Judging by the standards of their era, things become more complicated. Harold Holt. He forgot my birthday. I forgot his last location. Sir John A. Macdonald, first Prime Minister of Canada, did a lot for the country in its infancy, but treated indigenous people like garbage. John Lennon. He is basically portrayed as this selfless angel of the hippie movement, but the more you look into his life, his actions and how he treated other people close to him, you will quickly realize he is what some people would call a terrible human being. Joseph P. Kennedy, dad of John, Bobby, and Teddy, had one of his daughters lobotomized. She was likely autistic, but was considered an embarrassment to the family. Most Australians think Captain Cook was a pretty good dude. I think the Aboriginals would say otherwise. Napoleon. Him French, and I don't get why people like him so freaking much here. He re-established slavery and tried to conquer a huge part of Europe, leaving literal bloodbaths behind him. Gosh. Even the painting of his coronation reeks of narcissism. Hes putting the crown on his own head for FCK's sake. Ellen. Teddy Roosevelt. Interesting quote of his. I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of every 10 are. Thomas Edison. Biggest monopolist ever, and took credit for other people's work. He didn't invent the light bulb, but bought the rights and advanced it. He monopolized the film projector most films at the time, and it took a very long lawsuit to get that fixed. He took many creations from his employees and put his name on it. This wasn't illegal because of the contracts employees signed at the time, but it's not exactly a sign of goodwill. I don't hate the guy, but his character is often completely exaggerated. Elvis Presley. He never wrote a song in his life, but his record label made any songwriters hand over half of their writing fees before Elvis would record their songs. He's credited as a co-writer on the majority of his songs. Most people who are good are just powerless. Most people are complicated, and if they are in a position where they can get away with it, will do both good and bad things. Most of them. I don't know about other countries, but in America schools tend to put historical figures on high pedestals. It would be better to be upfront about how people do good things and terrible things. Charlemagne. He slaughtered a ridiculous amount of Saxon people for not converting to Christianity. He is also known for destroying pagan shrines and groves, when in reality he was just showing up to unguarded holy places, taking all the trinkets and offerings people had left, and then burned them down. Main takeaway, we like to categorize people into good and bad boxes, when in reality most people are a blend of both. Even the best people are not 100% clean. Anyone on the receiving end of anyone's greatness probably would claim that champion or hero or ruler, or king or general or explorer was a total scumbag. Hitler has remembered for his oil paintings, but most people don't know he actually killed 6 million Jews. Basically all of them. You couldn't get way up in politics without being a bad guy in certain way. Young Gandhi was racist. 2 random quotes from him. General belief seems to prevail in the colony that the Indians are a little better, if at all, than savages or the natives of Africa. About the mixing of the Kaffirs with the Indians, I must confess I feel most strongly edit. Fixed spelling and added young, as many correctly point out. He changed as he grew older and grew wiser.